Preston. You know, it's been about a month since my last video, which I shot on my Range Rover SVR, taking delivery of that vehicle, going over the spec and doing some driving impressions of that car. I just want to thank you all so much. If any of you are returning subscribers watching this current video, the video has over 12,000 views now, and it's just absolutely astounding for basically a brand new channel that I launched, I think it was just over 2 months ago now. So absolutely overwhelmed with the response, and I can't thank everybody enough that watched the video. So as you could probably glean today, I'm not sitting in my Range Rover SVR, I'm sat in my 2020 Land Rover Defender. As you may know, a couple months ago, I did sort of an introductory video of that vehicle, doing some walk-arounds, talking about the specs of the vehicle, talking about the Land Rover Defender in general. There wasn't much driving in that video. I did some light off-roading, showcasing some of the off-road features and trick that you get with the vehicle. But today I thought, we need to take this vehicle for a drive on the road. You know, fortunately, unfortunately, most people are going to be using this vehicle on the road as their daily driver, going to get groceries, doing errands and whatnot. So I wanted to give you some of my sort of livable impressions of the vehicle, having had this vehicle for about 8 or 9 months now. So let's get out on the road and talk about the car. So we're driving along in my 2020 Land Rover Defender P400 HSE. It's kind of a mouthful. Some of the first impressions when you get in this car, the windshield is pretty vertically raked. Seating position is pretty good, but you're definitely sitting up high. You sort of feel like you're driving along in a school bus a little bit, but I sort of like that feel. It reminds me a little bit like the G63. When you look at this category of car, there really isn't much competition. I was thinking about this off the top of my head before I was sort of thinking about some of the talking points for this video today. And what do you have as sort of alternatives in the market? We can talk about those for a second, but this car is interestingly priced, so I'll start there. So in my last Defender video, I talked about the different variants of the Defender, and it can get a bit confusing, and actually the nomenclature naming system for the car has changed from 2020 to 2021. So despite the car only being out for 1 year, Land Rover sort of changed up the naming system. But what you need to know basically is this car comes in a 90 and a 110 format, and the 90 is the 2-door, the 110 is the 4-door. You have base trim in both of those vehicles. It goes up to S, SE, HSE. There was the first edition that came out in 2020, and then there's the X, which is the top trim, but now there's even going to be an even higher trim, which is the V8, which is going to be a pretty interesting offering coming out. But with regard to the price, in that 90 range, you're looking at around $49,000, I believe, just a stripped out base 90 2-door. Then what do you have to compare the vehicle to? The Wrangler, I suppose, Wrangler Rubicon. Ford Bronco is not quite out yet. When you're looking at the Bronco pricing, $49,000 range, I believe, would be something like a Wild Track. You're in the upper 3/4 of the Bronco trim level at $49,000. So the question is this the bang for the buck vehicle? Is it worth getting over the competition? I would say yes, and here's why. Now, it's not like the Defender of yesteryear, where it was a purely utilitarian farm vehicle that you get in, you're very uncomfortable, you're bouncing around all over the road, there's no power. Forget about getting onto a highway or anywhere that basically holds a speed limit over 50 miles an hour. It's just an absolute nightmare. But they're cool, right? I mean, we like them because of their character and what they can do on farms, off-roading, and doing the task that the Defender was made to do as an agricultural vehicle. This vehicle is not that anymore, but it retains that capability. It gives you the luxury that you would expect from Land Rover, and in particularly some of the higher trims in their lineup, such as the Range Rover. On this HSE model that I have, this is Acorn Leather is the name of the finish, the color, and this is Windsor Leather, which is the same type of leather trim pattern and that you'd be receiving in your full-size Range Rover if you're going to go order a HSE Dynamic or Autobiography even. They're very well bolstered. You're very comfortable. You'd have no problem taking this on long trips. speaking of which is the ride quality. The ride quality is absolutely fantastic. This vehicle is equipped with the air suspension, so it's adjustable suspension. It can be transformed depending on the mode that you're in. So if you're in your off-road rock crawl mode, you know, it'll stiffen, loosen depending on the environments, and there's the automatic mode, rock crawl, etc., etc. So it is very, very compliant, very well damped, soaks up pretty much every bump there is on the road, especially, which you definitely need in Michigan, because it feels like you're driving on the surface of the moon here, driving around in Michigan. So I'm sitting here at the light, waiting for the light to turn. I could talk about a little bit of the power plant in this car. So this particular model, being the P400, is a straight 6 that is turbocharged, makes 400 horsepower, but it's not just a standalone turbo. It actually has the 24-volt alternator slash supercharger. It's a little bit of a misnomer to call it a supercharger. It's not like something you would see, you know, in a Shelby GT500, for example. But what it does is it acts as that torque fill to make up for the lag that you're going to experience from a standalone turbo motor. And it is very, very peppy. It's actually pretty surprising. One of the first things I noticed when I picked up this car, took delivery of it last July in 2020, was the way that the gearing is set up in this car. It's really interesting. You'll see when I go through this light here, it's really that was just a slight touch to the pedal, and it shot up to about 2,700, 2,800 RPM, which is really interesting. And I was talking to some friends about this and thought, you know, why is this geared this way out of first gear? You're really coming out of the gate pretty aggressively, you know. And we were thinking maybe it's perhaps has to do with off-roading to get you out of those tight spaces, for example. But you sort of have to train your brain to be very careful when you're pulling away from a light and there's another car pretty close in front of you. You got to make sure you don't slam into the back of their trunk right in front of you. So that takes some getting used to. But outside of that, it's a wonderful, wonderful power plant for this car. That alternator that I was talking about really does do a great job at filling in for the lag that you would experience in the turbo motor. And this thing's pretty quick. I think that Land Rover quotes it at about 5.6 seconds to 60, which is, you know, plenty of poke and power, and hilarious considering the thing kind of looks like a door stopper or a refrigerator. I'm driving along here in comfort. Again, just like my Range Rover video, we have our dedicated Prius in front of us that's going 10 miles an hour under the speed limit, so bear with me as we get to some of the better roads here. No, I'm not driving a GT3 RS, but I'm still going to show you a little bit of what this car can do when you push it a little bit. But until we get there, just talking about sort of the creature comforts in this car. Like the SVR that I have, this car has heated and cooled seats. I do not think there's a massage seat option yet, but I think it will be coming on the V8 one, which, you know, some of the Defender purists are going to be very upset with me that I even said it has heated and cooled seats. It's not a farm vehicle. It's, you know, they're bastardizing the namesake and all this stuff. Well, I totally hear that, and I love the old Defender, but at the same time, you have to understand that a lot of these things are beyond the company's control with regard to regulation, safety, emissions, and, you know, emissions, safety, or things like that. They have to move forward away from the past to some degree if you're going to bring a product to the market that is contemporary and acts as sort of a Swiss Army knife of a vehicle for people nowadays. The past Defender didn't even have airbags, for example. The chassis was outdated. To do what they needed to do to bring it up to today's standards, it would have cost them far too much money. It would not have been feasible for the company to continue to do so. So that's why they did the full overhaul that they did. Some people just say that this is sort of a rebodied Discovery. I disagree. The capability, I think, comes out and it shows that it's not, particularly with regard to its off-road capabilities. Its approach and departure angles are second to none in the class. They actually lead the Wrangler, believe it or not. So it is not just a dressed-up mall crawler. You can really use this off-road if you want. And I demonstrated this a little bit in my other video. You said, well, he was just going 5 miles an hour in snow. Well, yeah, I did. I did my GoPro setup, but you can see if you go watch that video. I'll put it in the description. You can see that thing made haste right through 2.5 feet of accumulated snow, no problem. If you really want to use this, what it's engineered for, it'll get you through almost anything. We got our 400 horsepower straight six mated to our 8-speed ZF automatic gearbox, much like the SVR. Here we go, coming around the turn, and here we go. Yeah, not bad at all. That's 70 right there. Yeah, it is very quick. It is very surprising. If you bring somebody into this car who's never been in one of these, they will be very, very surprised. Here we are coming up to our turn. It's a 25 mark turn, coming in at 40. It's not bad. I mean, you feel a little bit of body roll, but like I said, for something that's shaped like a square, it is pretty incredible dynamically what these engineers were able to do with this vehicle. I spoke about it a little bit in the SVR video last time. The way that these engineers calibrate the stability and the traction control and have all these parts communicate with each other really brings a rewarding driver experience to you when you're piloting this vehicle for something that should not be able to do this. You can see I just made very quick haste through that corner, accelerated through, not very much understeer. It feels really good, and the brake feels not bad either. One thing to note with this car, obviously it's not one of the SV division vehicles. It does not have your dynamic mode, things like that. The V8 model will have the dynamic mode. It has just your normal comfort mode. There's also the automatic mode where it can basically sense what environment you're in, and it will tailor the ECU and the electronics. The electronics will tailor the chassis toward the environment that you're driving around in, and it learns the environment very quickly. It's very clever. But yeah, I think it would be a little bit silly to have a dynamic mode in this. But what else? Some of the creature comforts of this vehicle. I have a heated steering wheel, which is just great for snowy, cold weather here in Michigan. Just a lot of the interesting touches in this vehicle. Like I said, the leather and stuff is very supple. You're very comfortable. It's well bolstered. You can really just sit back and relax, and you feel like you can take this on a long journey. I think that you could take this 1,500 miles, no problem. Your finishing touches in the interior, I love the combination of sort of the utility and the luxury. You have the nice finishes on the seats. You got a nice sort of center console armrest that is plush, well bolstered. You got some leather touches everywhere here on this HSE model. But on the door here, there's actually some exposed bolts, which is cool. It gives sort of that ode to the Defender of old, so you don't feel like you're in something that is necessarily too modern. You do feel that you're in a Defender, and I love how they give some of these touches to the vehicle. The other things you notice when you're driving along in this vehicle is just how light the steering is. That's sort of, I guess, one of my complaints about the car. Yes, you're not driving along in a cup car. You know, you're not going to have your hydraulic steering that you would in days of old, but I do think that it could have a little bit more feel. Just for giggles, I'm going to give you a little bit of a freeway pull here. Check out how it behaves on the on-ramp here. This will be quite hilarious considering we are in a vertical box. The turn-in feels pretty good. Again, that light steering is one of the first things you notice. 400 horsepower unleashed. Yeah, it feels pretty good. It's pretty surprising. Thank you so much again for watching this video. Please subscribe and like the video if you haven't already. Again, I was absolutely overwhelmed with the response to the SVR video. I'm so glad y'all liked it. I'm going to do some more videos on that, on the SVR soon, and there's some more coming up. So thanks a lot. Again, I'm Preston, PKF, signing out. See you next time.